Hello everybody, I'm Michelle. I'm a licensed massage therapist in Washington, and I bring you MBLEx resources here on YouTube and also on my website. You'll find a link in the description below and also in the pinned comment to take you to a huge listing of all the resources that I have for each of the sections of the Massage and Bodywork licensing exam to help you to be able to pass that exam with calm and confidence. We are working on continuing the Anatomy and Physiology series that I'm creating for a course to put on my website. But I'm just posting these videos up so that you guys have early access to them before I have the course completed. We're going on in Unit 22 now, going into the circulatory system. So this video is going to be all about introducing the circulatory system. There's going to be 3 videos in the series. Watch out for all of those. In this one, we're just doing a quick overview, and I just want to make sure that you know that I have a whole video on cardiovascular pathologies. There'll be a link for it in the pinned comment and in the description below. Just look in there and see what all I have. So there's the individual video that I have here on YouTube, but also in all of those resources, I have a Pathologies for Body Workers course that goes through every system of the body and talks about the pathologies and how they relate to massage and bodywork, what you need to know for the MBLEx. Very important information to pass the massage and bodywork licensing exam. In this video, we're going to be talking about circulatory system function, the components of the circulatory system, so that's blood, including plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. We're going to be going over the blood vessels, which are arteries, arterioles, capillaries, veins, and venules. And then we're going to tie everything together with some MBLEx practice questions so that you can get an idea of what to expect when you're taking that exam regarding this information. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. But first, I just want to remind you to make sure and subscribe to the channel so that you can have access to all of this information going on. And then also make sure and like the video so that future massage therapist students have access to this information. Let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, blood vessels and flow. A body worker's guide to circulation. The circulatory system is the body's transportation and communication highway, delivering oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and immune cells to every tissue while removing waste and maintaining homeostasis. For massage therapists and body workers, understanding how blood flows through the heart, vessels, and tissues is essential for providing safe and effective treatments. Knowledge of circulation helps guide pressure choices, supports clients with conditions such as edema or varicose veins, and enhances your ability to promote relaxation, improve local blood flow, and recognize when modifications or contraindications are needed. Okay, so what does the circulatory system do? Watch out for these kinds of questions for the MBLEx. You are expected to know what each system does for the whole body. So it transports nutrients, wastes, hormones, and other vital substances that are essential for cellular activity. So it is the highways. It is the highway that takes everything around. Besides the nervous system, which is like the light rail, and then like the circulatory system is like taking the boat. So it helps regulate body acidity, pH, temperature, and fluid volume. It provides protection through the immune responses and blood clotting and tissue healing. So very important functions. The different components of the circulatory system would be your blood vessels, and your heart. So they're broken, each of those things are broken down into all their parts. Like the blood has the plasma, and it has the things inside of the plasma, which are the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. And then the blood vessels have going from biggest to smallest, and then smallest to biggest again in the circulatory system, going around and around and around. Arteries, arterioles, capillaries. And then from capillaries, venules to veins, back to the heart. All right. So heart has its chambers, and it has its big vessels coming in and out, and it has the valves in between each of the chambers. Now, let's get started talking about the components of the circulatory system. First, we're going to talk about blood and what is blood made out of. So blood is first plasma, which is most of it, and then it has the formed elements, which are the solids: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. It's the primary transportation medium for nutrients, wastes, and chemicals like hormones. The nutrients enter the blood through the digestive and respiratory systems. So it picks up those nutrients from each of those systems, and then it moves waste products to the kidneys, liver, and spleen for filtration. And blood maintains a slightly alkaline pH of 7.35 to 7.45. Very important for the MBLEx to know what the pH of your blood is. Plasma is 55% of total blood volume. 90% of it is water, and the remaining are ions, hormones, and plasma proteins. All right, so here is a list of your plasma proteins. We have albumin, which is the most abundant. It contributes to osmotic pressure and maintains your blood volume. It's a transport carrier protein for hormones and fatty acids. Remember, in the endocrine system, we were talking about how lipid-soluble hormones can't get around in the blood by themselves. They need a carrier protein, which is often albumin. Globulins are antibodies against viral and bacterial pathogens. They have immune response complements, which means they help with the immune response. They have clotting factors, and they are also a transport protein for iron, lipids, and vitamins. And then fibrinogen is converted into fibrin for blood clotting. So those are the plasma proteins. So imagine this is plasma with all of its floaty proteins inside of it. I don't know. I thought that was close, at least. Looks a little bit like raspberries. Now let's talk about red blood cells, which are also known as erythrocytes. Their main function is to transport oxygen for cellular metabolism in your body. That's how the oxygen that you inhale gets everywhere. That oxygen travels on the red blood cells. So hemoglobin is the iron-rich protein that binds oxygen, and it's attached to a red blood cell. It also carries carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions on a different binding site. The hydrogen ion has to attach to the oxygen binding site only when the oxygen has been released. And that's what helps to regulate the pH of our blood, is having those hydrogens attached to red blood cells. The shape is biconcave, which means that there's a dip on both sides. If you flip that around, it would be like they would have that little cave, that little bowl in the middle, which helps to increase oxygen carrying capacity because of its increased surface area. Now, red blood cells have no nucleus, and that means they cannot divide. And how they are actually produced in the red bone marrow through hematopoiesis, but we don't need to know the details about how hematopoiesis happens. Just know that that is the word for it. And then its lifespan is about 120 days, which is a nice long time. Then it gets recycled by the liver and the spleen. Another thing about red blood cells is there are specific antigens that's identity marking proteins that help the immune system recognize blood cells as being part of your body. So your white blood cells are going around. They're like, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? To all of the red blood cells. And they're like, I'm this person, either a type A or a type B, a type AB or a type O. So type AB is both A and B, and type O is neither A or B. But either way, your white blood cells know that you're okay. So this is why it's really important for people to get matching blood, or their white blood cells that live in their body will say, you're not the right blood. And that causes problems. And then just a quick overview of the Rh factor. It's another antigen that's also, in addition to these other antigens, attached onto red blood cells. And it's it's only really important for blood transfusions in pregnancy. So Rh positive, you don't have that antigen. Rh negative means that, or sorry, the opposite. Antigen is there for Rh positive. The reason that it's called Rh is because this antigen was first found on rhesus monkeys, which is spelled with an RH. And so that just stuck. And that's why they call it Rh. Okay, white blood cells are also known as leukocytes. So cytes means cells, leuko means immune. In that page here, erythrocytes, eryth means red, and cytes means cells. Okay, so white blood cells are key players in healing and their immune response. They only live 6 to 8 hours in the blood, but if they can get into tissues, they'll last a lot longer. They are round with a prominent nucleus. There are two major categories of the different kinds of white blood cells. There are granular leukocytes and agranular leukocytes. Can you imagine what that means? So granular means that under a microscope, they look like they're grainy. And so that's granular, grainy, granular. Get it? Agranular means not granular. Okay. So, ratio of red blood cells to white blood cells, 700 red blood cells to 1 white blood cell. Okay, so let's look at the granular white blood cells. That means under a microscope, they look grainy. There's neutrophils, which is the most abundant. I don't know which of these are supposed to, just whatever. These are not an example of what they look like. Neutrophils are the most abundant white blood cell. They do phagocytosis, which means they eat pathogens. Phage means eat, and they destroy bacteria. They're the first responders during an infection. Basophils intensify the inflammatory response. They release histamine and other chemicals, and they're active in allergic reactions. So you can blame basophils for your allergic reactions. And eosinophils they do phagocytosis in antigen-antibody complexes. They destroy some parasitic worms. They help counteract histamine in allergic responses. So, regarding all of these, you don't really need to have each of these white blood cells jobs memorized. Just know that they're granular and agranular. Neutrophils are kind of important to know because they're most abundant. Lymphocytes are really important to know because they are like the T cells, the B cells, and the NK cells, which are for specific adaptations. And we're going to talk more about that in the lymphatic system videos. Monocytes do phagocytosis, and they're involved in the immune response. They're the ones that get into the tissues and transform into macrophages. More on that in the lymphatic system. So they clean up debris and help initiate healing. So this is an example of a white blood cell eating a bacteria. Phagocytosis. And then finally, platelets are the remaining formed component inside of blood. These are cell fragments, and their big old job is hemostasis. That means stopping the bleeding. Hemostasis means stop bleeding. That's one to memorize. It's a big old circle around that. Hemostasis means blood is stable. So it's activated when a blood vessel is damaged and the platelets clump, 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 clump. Their lifespan is about 10 days, and just like the red blood cells, they don't have a nucleus, but they do have mitochondria. All right, so here are the steps involved in hemostasis. That means clotting the blood. So first thing that happens when the blood vessel is damaged is that the vessel cells release chemicals that trigger the blood vessels to contract, which it's like a tourniquet that stops so much blood from getting to that spot. So your body will immediately try to tourniquet by squeezing the blood vessels closed. So the contraction narrows the vessel and reduces blood loss, okay? And then a platelet plug comes along. So the platelets, which are the blue sparkles in here, they come and they start to stop the bleeding. They collect in there. So they're sticking to the damaged area, And there is a fibrinogen, which is one of those proteins, plasma proteins that I mentioned. It starts to stick into the platelets to create a network, a net, a mash of these platelets and red blood cells to create a clot, also known as coagulation. Another enzyme that is kicked off to really get this fibrin collecting is thrombin, an activated enzyme. Okay. All right. So that's how that happens. And we are going to be getting into the blood vessels. There are 3 types of blood vessels. We have arterial vessels that carry the blood away from the heart. We have capillaries that are where the nutrient and waste exchange happens. And then we have the venous vessels, which carry the blood back to the heart. So here's the pathway: heart, arteries, arterioles, capillaries in the middle, venules, and veins. All right, I don't want to go over that too much because I know that you guys get that. But I do want to also just say this once, and then I'm going to say it again a whole bunch more times, in that when we're referring to veins and vessels, whether that's in the pulmonary system where the blood vessels are going to the lungs, or whether that's in the rest of the system, it's always the case that it's called an artery, whether it's oxygenated, whether the blood in it is oxygenated or deoxygenated. It's always about arteries are vessels that carry a substance away from the heart. Is always an artery, whether it's oxygenated or deoxygenated. Okay. But typically for the systems, this is the case, that veins have deoxygenated blood, and that's why I have it in blue. Okay, so structure of the blood vessels. So here we got the white blood cells and the red blood cells living in there. There is an inner layer that are epithelial cells, and the middle layer is where that smooth muscle is, and it can contract to move blood along. There's more smooth muscle tissue in an artery than there is in a vein, but there is still some smooth muscle tissue in the veins. And then the outer layer is connective tissue, which provides strength and support. So the arteries can expand and recoil with each heartbeat. So they're like super stretchy, and so that they can handle the volume of blood flow that is coming through there. But also, like, the point is to get that oxygenated blood all over the body. So there's a lot of pressure inside of the arteries. So that's why it has such a thick, smooth muscle layer. You see a nice thick layer there, stronger than veins to withstand the pressure of how quickly and how forcefully the blood has to get pushed by the heart. Arterioles, which are the smaller versions that have branched out before they become capillaries, they're still under some moderate pressure. And then there is a sphincter between the arteriole and the capillary to regulate how much blood enters the capillary, which is critical for directing blood flow to areas with greater need. And something just for you to know for the MBLEx, vasoconstriction means when the blood vessels narrow, and then vasodilation is when the blood vessels open. So if we need less blood, we have vasoconstriction, and we need more blood, we have vasodilation. All right, capillaries are tiny, capillary beds, nutrient and waste exchange via diffusion. So here's a little example of what diffusion looks like. That just means that the stuff that needs to go in or out of the capillary goes by just diffusing through the cell membrane. All right. And capillary beds are tiny networks of capillaries where nutrient and waste exchange occurs. I'm going to be talking about this whole topic some more in a future circulatory system video, so watch out for that. I will be going in depth about that. So capillaries are found all over the body, and they connect the arterioles to the venules. That's where the oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged all over the body. So the walls of one layer of walls of one layer of epithelial cells for easy diffusion, and they're protected by glycocalyx, which is a coating that keeps the vessel structure in shape in spite of the amount of stuff that's passing in and out between the cells. So the density of the capillary beds all over the body vary by what the tissue needs. So if there's a high density of, or if it's a part of the body that needs a lot of blood, that needs a lot of oxygen, like your brain or your liver or your muscles, then you need a high density of capillaries. And then vice versa, like your ligaments, tendons, and cartilage, they don't need a whole lot of blood. So that's why they have a low density of capillary beds, but they do have some. And then, let's see, veins, a little bit about veins. Their function is to carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart. All right. And that is it, with the exception of the pulmonary artery, which carries deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from the pulmonary system back to the heart. It's just what's going back to the heart. Remember that. So the venules begin from the capillaries as venules, which merge into the larger veins. So smaller to bigger, going back to the heart. The structure and characteristics are they are thinner. They have thinner, smooth muscle layer than arteries and easily expand to hold larger blood volumes. So essentially, veins are the storage compartment for blood. So at any given time, there will be more blood in the veins than there is in the arteries. So that's an interesting thing to remember, but that's really important when it comes to varicose veins and any kind of pathology where somebody has pooling blood. Is because that's where the blood gets stored, and so it's more likely to clot there and cause problems. So they have one-way valves that prevent backflow, and that's what this image is about. One-way valves, so the blood's going up, 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 and then if something happens where the blood gets pushed backward, the valves will stop that blood from getting pushed backward. That makes short segments that help the blood move upward against gravity, especially in situations where there's very little pressure. All right, so before we start the MBLEx practice questions, I want to come over here and talk about the names for all of these arteries and veins. So typically the arteries and veins are named according to the body that body part that they live in. So if we come in here, we've got the vena cava here, and we've got the aorta coming out. So there's a pulmonary and there's a pulmonary vein and a pulmonary aorta. So those are there. Those go to the heart. But when it comes to supplying the system, the rest of the system, we have the pulmonary bridge that is coming out of the heart right here, and it's going to branch out to the upper systems. So the blood that is going up to the upper systems, we have the carotid artery that's going to be on the right side, and we have the subclavian artery that's going to be on the left side. Interesting, huh? That we have different names for each of those, but that's something to know. That is the same for veins as well, except that it's known as the subclavian and the jugular. So carotid artery and the jugular vein on one side, and the subclavian on the opposite side. Probably won't need to know that differentiation, but I don't know, maybe you'll get an MBLEx question about that. So branching off, going down the arms, we have the brachiocephalic artery, which goes down the arms. It turns into the axillary, which goes under the armpit. And when it comes to veins, I just want to make sure on my sheet that I have this right. Yep, brachiocephalic as well for veins. And then they go down the arms, and as they divide going down the arms, the names will correspond to the body part, like brachial, radial, ulnar. And then descending, we have the descending aorta, and of course we have the inferior vena cava, and yeah, so descending aorta, the thoracic aorta, but it's the descending one. So we got the thoracic one, and in here we got the mesenteric artery. Oh, there we go, abdominal and thoracic aortas. So abdominal means the abdomen, thoracic means in the chest, and then, yeah, still inferior vena cava going all the way down. But as we have all these different little divides that go into the digestive system, such as the celiac trunk, the mesenteric artery, that's a vertebrae. Try again. Renal artery, that's going to the kidneys, and that's right and left. So there's two of those. So yeah, those all divide into the viscera. But then as we go down into the pelvic region, we have the iliac vein and iliac artery, and they're going to be right and left because they split to go down the legs. And so as you go down the legs, once again, each of these segments of arteries and veins are going to be named after the body parts. So we have femoral and the femoral vein and artery, and we have the tibial. You gonna work? Oh, saphenous vein. Okay, here's the difference. Tibial artery for the arteries, saphenous vein for the veins. Okay, and that's in the lower leg. Saphenous vein and tibial artery. So now you know the difference. Okay, let's see. Is there a tibial vein? Let's see. Oh, we do have tibial veins. The saphenous one is the one that's kind of going up. You see people with varicose veins in this area, and it's usually the saphenous one that comes up here, going right up the middle of the legs. That's the one you really need to look out for with deep vein deep vein thrombosis. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation here and look at those MBLEx questions. All right. Which statement best captures a key function of the circulatory system? Back to the functions. A, it directly regulates skeletal muscle contraction during movement. No, that would be the nervous system. B, it transports gases, nutrients, hormones, and waste products to maintain cellular function and homeostasis. That sounds right. C, it breaks down metabolic waste before it reaches the kidneys. No. And D, it stores calcium, produces immune cells. Nope. All right, so here's a little explanation for the answer being B, transporting gases, nutrients, hormones, and waste products. The circulatory system ensures every cell in the body receives oxygen, nutrients, and hormonal signals, while also carrying carbon dioxide and metabolic waste to organs like the kidneys, liver, and lungs for removal. These transport, regulatory, and protective functions maintain internal stability, that's homeostasis, making the system essential for life. Next question. Which blood component is correctly matched with its primary role? So that means we have 3 wrong answers and 1 correct answer, matchy-matchy. So what have we got here? A, red blood cells transport oxygen using hemoglobin. Ooh, well, right off the bat, I like that one. B, white blood cells maintain blood volume through osmotic pressure. No, that would be proteins. So plasma proteins. C, platelets carry hormones throughout the bloodstream. Nope, that would be another plasma protein. And then D, plasma responsible for blood clotting at injury sites. That would be platelets. So I like A, red blood cells transporting oxygen using hemoglobin. Okay, so explanation. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin, an iron-rich protein that bonds oxygen in the lungs and delivers it to tissues. They also help remove carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions, which is crucial for maintaining acid-base balance. White blood cells support immunity, plasma regulates volume, and transports dissolved particles, and platelets initiate clotting, not hormone transport. All right, next question. In the microcirculation, which feature allows capillaries to efficiently exchange nutrients and waste with surrounding tissues? Which feature allows them to exchange nutrients? Okay, let's try this. A, their thick, smooth muscle layer supports high pressure flow. No, that doesn't help with efficient exchange of nutrients. That's what we're looking for. Glycocalyx prevents all movement of substances across the wall. That doesn't help with the efficient exchange of nutrients. Okay. C, their walls consist of a single layer of epithelial cells to allow diffusion. That's the one right there. D, they contain one-way valves to prevent backflow. Nope. All right, so the answer is C, and the explanation is capillaries consist of a single layer of simple squamous epithelial cells supported by a thin basement membrane and protected by a glycocalyx layer. Their ultra-thin structure allows oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and waste products to diffuse freely between blood and tissues. Unlike arteries or veins, capillaries lack smooth muscle and valves because diffusion, not pressure regulation, is their primary function. Okay, one more question. Which of the following correctly describes the difference between veins and arteries? What is the difference between veins and arteries? A, arteries contain valves. No, veins do not. Okay, so A is not correct because we're looking for correct. All right. B, veins have thinner, smooth muscle layers and rely on valves to return blood to the heart. All right, so that's true. Valves for the heart, valves for the return. They have thinner, smooth muscle layers. That's true also. So B looks good. C, arteries carry only oxygenated blood, while veins only carry Arteries carry only oxygenated blood, while veins only carry deoxygenated blood. Now, remember what I was saying. Arteries means that the thing about arteries is it carries fluid back to the heart, whether it's oxygenated or deoxygenated. This is super important to remember. All right. So that has nothing to do with why we call arteries what they are and veins are what they are. And D, veins maintain higher blood pressure to distribute nutrients to tissues, and that's not true. All right, so B, veins have thinner, smooth muscle layers and rely on valves to return blood to the heart. The explanation is veins have thin, flexible walls and depend on one-way valves plus skeletal muscle contractions to assist low-pressure blood back to the heart. Arteries, in contrast, have thicker, smooth muscle layers designed to handle the strong pressure generated by the heart. While most arteries carry oxygenated blood and most veins carry deoxygenated blood, there are exceptions, such as the pulmonary vessels, so C is not universally true. And that is that for us for this video. And make sure and get your subscribe on so that you can be in touch when more videos come out, and give this video a thumbs up if you thought it was useful so that other people can have access to this information.